I call myself an accidental entrepreneur in some sense because at that point I was pretty happy working and living in the US. And I was very influenced by the consumer internet because it had really started to take shape in the mid 90s in the US. And Netscape had just gone public. And so we were all very influenced by what was happening on the internet, this new sort of shiny thing, this toy that everybody was playing with. Kind of like what's happening with Web 3.0 today, right? And so when I came back, I went to my dad's office and this gentleman, like Pandit, those days Pandits used to do matchmaking. And he must have heard that I'm in town, so, he thought ki achhi murgi mil gayi, so he came to try to, find me a match. And he was carrying a lot of biodata in his bag. And, I just felt ki ye, matlab, इसके ये जितना वजन उठा सकते हैं, the weight he can carry limits my choice of life partner. So why not just put this on the internet and take away all the geographical and spatial limitations? So I asked him, I said, भाई तुम्हारे biodata हमको दे दो, हम कर लेते हैं. But clearly he was not ready. He kind of thought we were crazy and he left. But the idea was born, and so then we launched Shaadi.com. Then after some time, we launched Makaan.com, Moj Mobile, and we started. If you look at the year 2000, and if you go all the way to 2010, every year we used to think this is the breakout year for the internet. But frankly, what happened was it was barely growing. In 2000, there was maybe 10, 12 million internet users or connections. And in 2009, there was, guess what? Only 20% more, 30% more. So it wasn't really growing. So we were all forced to do multiple businesses within the internet to try and expand our target market. But I think what happened in 2017, and that's why I often say that the internet in India is really just 3-4 years old. So two changes happened after 2010. One is mobile internet became a real thing, right? So at that point it was 2G and 2.5G. But after 2014, 15, 3G started to take off, right? And so you saw the first wave of internet users going from maybe 10, 15 million users to maybe 40, 50 million users. Once 3G became a thing. And then the big real wave came with the Geo dramatically dropping the prices of data. And that's when it really became affordable and ubiquitous so that people could always be consuming data and always be online for 200-300 rupees a month. And that happened in sort of 2017 onwards. So I think India's journey in terms of internet adoption has not been a straight line, and it's not been as rapid as the West because of affordability and because of accessibility. I think those problems are now resolved. And therefore, I often say the internet in India is really just 4 years old. And if you look at it from that lens, then the game is just beginning. The differences are 2-3. I think one is that founders are a lot hungrier, right? So they're a lot younger, and because they're starting out in their 20s, when you're in your 20s, you're invincible. You feel like you can take on the world and nothing can break you. The other thing is that the rails or the infrastructure rails for building a technology business or an internet business are already in place. And the other big change, which is probably the biggest change, right? And which has led to all the other changes, is capital availability. People understand now that if you have a good idea and you can demonstrate your ability to succeed, capital is not a problem. So people can think and dream bigger. I think the two other changes that I would talk about that kind of are interesting, one is a plus and one is a minus in a way. One is that the plus is that talent ecosystem is finally in place. And the final change that I see is, when we started, obviously it was not as competitive. While all these things were not available, our challenges were really about finding talent and trying to achieve scale. Today, the challenge is about competitive strategies. I think the word angel makes us sound a little more altruistic than we are. But in all honesty, we are opportunists. who are looking for a return on our money. Of course, we want to do something for the startup ecosystem, and that in itself is a reward. But at the same time, we want to make a return on our capital. So look, I started angel investing when I didn't know that it was called angel investing. All I knew is I met a bunch of guys in that company. My first investment was a company called Interactive Avenues. And they were building a digital ad agency, and they were helping with our business as well. And it was very clear to me that digital ad agencies are going to survive and thrive, and that was already happening in the US. So when I met these 4 or 5 founders, they had all the talent and they had all the skills. And I knew, sometimes you just know something is going to do well. And I knew that India needs more digital ad agencies. And so I said, look, if you guys get out and start your own company, then I'll fund you. And very quickly they agreed. And I remember, we negotiated sitting at the airport as I was taking a flight out to the US. And I wrote them a check right there at the airport, in Bombay International Airport. And, I ended up over time becoming the largest shareholder of that company. And the company did very well. And so we sold it a few years back. And that gave me the confidence, about continuing to angel invest. By then, I had already invested in Ola Cabs. And by 2010-11, I became a very active angel investor. Again, because, I'm an entrepreneur, I'm an opportunistic. I saw that the internet was going to change and shape a lot of industries and create a lot of opportunities. And it was also very clear to me that obviously I'm not going to be able to do all this on my own. And it's going to get very competitive. So if you back the right founders and the right entrepreneurs, if you have some capital, it's a great asset class when you can make abnormal returns that you cannot in other asset classes, particularly at that time, because everybody else had not sensed the opportunity. So I think that's kind of how I jumped into it. And as I started seeing companies and founders, wherever I felt that they had the capabilities and the perseverance to make it big, I backed them. And of course, many of my companies have failed. Out of 200, more than 60 have been written off, right? So that's the name of the game. I call it it's very simple. I call it a T4 model. And T1 is really about TAM, right? Which is total addressable market. So is the market, if it's not there today, at least in the future, will it be very large? And when I say very large, I mean, it needs to be at least, $8-10 billion. The second T is team, right? We come in at a very early stage, so everything depends on the team. The third is timing, which is extremely crucial, right? Even if you have the right team and you have a right potential TAM, timing can be off. Finally, we look at things like traction. Is there momentum in this space? How do the numbers look? The one quality that differentiates successful people from not very successful is perseverance. My fundamental belief is if you do something in a large market for 10 years at a go, you will find a way to create value. I did act in a film called Flavors, and then I played a small part in a film called 99 a long time ago. And not a career that I was pursuing, but when I lived in the US, a couple of people I met, Raj and DK, and today they're very celebrated names in Bollywood. I take some credit in bringing them over from the US to India. But Raj and DK and I met, and they were writing a script. And, they always write based on real characters. Even if you see one of the latest series called Family Man, which became a big hit. There's a character in Family Man, you cannot remember, but he's also based on me. So we're pretty close friends. So they wrote the first script that they were writing. They wrote a central character based on me. And then they asked me if I would play it. And I said, look, I know nothing about doing films or acting. So we said, look, if you don't find somebody who's suitable enough by the end of the casting, then I'll play it. And so they held me to it. They said, look, we haven't found anybody who can do justice to the character, so why don't you do it? And so I played it. I was playing an NRI who lived in the US and was getting married to a white girl, an American girl. And my parents sort of come in for my wedding and all the tamasha that happens around the wedding. Right. So it was a great film. It was an underground hit. I never expected it to be. And frankly, for a couple of years, I got pretty well known in the American sort of NRI circles. But I think after doing 99, I decided that look, it's time to focus on my business. And then my next brush with, I guess, showmanship, if you want to call it that, was Shark Tank. Undoubtedly is a book called Vision 2020 that I read in 1997, and it pretty much laid out the roadmap for the next 25 years. And the world is playing out exactly like the book predicted it would. If you wanted to be a multi-billionaire, you could have bought a copy of that book in 97 and followed it to the T, and it played out exactly like that. I would have to put Godfather series right at top because all my favorite actors and characters are in the movie. There's Al Pacino, there's Marlon Brando, there's Robert De Niro. Golmaal, Chupke Chupke, Angur, old classics, right? All funny, hilarious movies. Lately, Gully Boy and 99, our film. I enjoy working with Ishni. We both raise each other's game. I would certainly be a lot more thesis-based, more aggressive, and at the same time more selective. If it would be one person, then I'd say my daughter Eliza. If it would be two people, then I'd say my daughter Eliza and my wife Archer, because then we could have some more babies.